Mm-hmm.
Thank you. At least one of them. That's off.
Okay, we are go for launch. I do not see Mike in here yet.
Good evening and welcome to the May 10th, 2021 Town Board Workshop meeting. I'd like to call it to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford, Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. Councilmember Stafford is currently on the road as part of his full-time job. So he's going to try to connect in with his, I guess he's got his son in the car who will be operating his phone for him. We'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We got a lot of things to sign down there.
We do.
Did John Hancock going?
Yep. So we have 6 special permits, although a bunch of them are related. They have to do with the Moose Lodge to hold their events that require a liquor license. We have the fairways at Riverton. You often hear it's usually referred to as parcel A, although it's technically 2 parcels because the park kind of splits it in 2. Then we have West Her Automotive Group. They want to temporarily use part of the marketplace, small parking lot. And then Commercial Street Partners wants to construct 4 multifamily buildings with a building height of 55 feet. So
That's the mall, right? I think so.
Commercial Street Partners, I don't think it is. Becky, do you know offhand the address of that?
Yes, that's the one, the Lehigh mixed use development.
Oh, okay. So if you remember, they weren't sure what the final heights were going to be on the apartment buildings in the back, so they had waited. We will have a presentation for the Antoinette Brown Blackwell Woman of the Year Award, as well as the ABB scholarships. Are there really no public hearings?
Really? We're gonna call for some more, but this one, there are not any.
Okay. Guess I'm getting confused with the calls. Okay. It seems like with all the code changes, there had to be some public hearing, but I guess not. Okay, first up, there with letters of support for farmland protection implementation grants. That's for Stone Crop and Van Voorhees Farms. I just talked to, so the Genesee Land Trust is leading this effort. I've also talked with Bob King at the county. And it's basically, it's a program through New York State where there's monies available to essentially buy development rights from the farms, which gets the farms necessary capital to upgrade, modernize.
Okay.
So both of those farms, Stone Crop is located on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road. Rush Henrietta, not too many farms at Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road. On Rush Henrietta Town Line Road, and Van Voorhees is on Williams, just this side of Pittsford. It's on the other side of Ascension Gardens. So it's stuck in between Ascension Gardens and the town of Pittsford. So like I said, they're both up. I wrote a letter of support. When you read the thing from the state as far as the grants, it seems to me that it needed to be a town and not just the town supervisor. So it's,
Okay.
I didn't think anybody would object, but we have to formally pass it as a resolution. Any questions on that?
No.
Then we have professional services for the completion of this re-subdivision and purchase of Good Shepherd. So there's actually two services we need, both from the same company. The surveying work they've already done the surveying to create the parcel map, and they're pretty much now just finishing up on what's needed for the subdivision. Roland is working with them on that. But we basically just reached out to the school and we've essentially taken over the contract. We're going to just get it done.
Okay.
They should be done very soon. That was around 9K. I added an extra 500 just in case. I don't think there'll be anything additional, but I just didn't want to have to then come back 2 weeks from now. And then there's another just under $2,000 for regulated building materials inspections. So that's asbestos, stuff like that. They had largely completed the church. We just have them to update it for us. But then there was also some work on the farmhouse because if you remember, the school district wasn't going to use the farmhouse, so they weren't as concerned about it. So it's arguable whether it needed to be on the resolution because it's $2,000, but because it was the same company and the same effort, we figured throw it together just so there's no question.
I have a question. This will be done before we close?
Yes.
Okay. Does it have to be done before we close?
Yes.
Because we're defining the parcels.
Right.
Okay.
That we're
It's part of
actually
our
buying.
cost of closing. Okay.
Correct. And I think that's other than we're going to have to file the stuff at the county, but I think that's our only cost.
So the 2K, does that have to be done before closing?
Before closing, no. Before we do any work, yes, because our goal is to try to get the handicap accessible ramp in there. I would love to be able to have it available if need be for elections. I know most of the sites have already been designated, but just in case there's an emergency need, I'd like to have something available.
So when are we anticipating closing, I guess?
Closing is on or before May 31st. So it doesn't matter whether the regulated building materials is completed, but again, from a expedience sake, I'd like them to get it wrapped up now.
So do we think we'll start working on it before the closing?
TBD. It depends if it's pushed out. I mean, that's not that far away. So
Oh, it's not. It's pretty
yeah,
close.
so I don't see it. If we had talked about that we would have an agreement with the school district to allow us to get started on it. I think what we're going to just do is essentially go and inspect it and plan it out, but that we won't actually start work. Therefore, we won't have to deal with any insurance changes prior to closing.
I think that's a great idea. I don't know timing wise if we'd be able to do it quicker than that anyway, but if closing came in quicker, maybe,
Right.
So just a question I had.
Yep. Any other questions on that? On a related note, if there's anybody out there, I know at least one person has contacted me interested in being on a ad hoc committee that will help work on the Good Shepherd Burger Farmhouse, apply for that. So we're going to have a representative from the facilities. So what's it called? The Parks and Rec Advisory Board. We'll have somebody one of the town board members, but I also want some citizens at large.
Do you have anybody from the historical site committee that?
No, thank you. That's the other one I was trying to think of. And someone from the historic site committee. So Becky, have we put a link up there for sending in? Or could we? Make sure it's in-
We haven't yet. We were waiting for this discussion here, but yeah, we can put something up tomorrow.
Great. So yeah, there'll be, just like with any, and then it'll also go out to the people who've signed up for the board opening notices.
Okay.
E-notify.
Gotcha.
But like I said, I do know there have been some people who've expressed interest in that.
And I would be willing to represent the town board on there since I'm on the historical site committee. They ask me questions about it all the time, so.
Okay. Don, if there were 3 of us or more from town board members on there, would that cause an issue from an open meeting law? That's what I was afraid of.
You can have 2.
Right,
2 town board members.
right,
Oh, Steve, you can be on there. I don't have a problem with that.
right. I'm just checking.
Yep.
I thought that's why I had expressly asked for 1.
Right.
Because of that issue.
Yep.
It means otherwise everything has to be public meeting notice and whole 9 yards.
Yep.
That's fine. You want, that's.
No. I'm fine. I'm fine with you doing it, and I'm fine with Steve doing it. I'm good.
Right,
No, well,
Lisa,
we'll talk about it.
no, it's done.
okay.
It's done.
Similarly, we will be having a call for interested parties to apply for the Sustainability Committee. You'll see in your packet, there was some potential code changes. I decided that it doesn't make sense to add that code now, since we don't actually have any portions of code on sustainability. This committee is going to create them. The committee was actually in that code, but in talking to Dom, we can do the committee just by resolution. And then if we decide to make it more permanent, we can add that section of code. But just like we did with the updates to the ethics board, I'd rather go through the effort first with the board, define it out, and then codify it once instead of putting it in there and then changing it. So,
Okay.
But so like I said, that code that's attached is for information only. That's sort of a starting point with where this committee would work from. But this is follow up. It was actually, we'd started some of this prior to Color Henrietta Green being here, but then they've been a good impetus, because one of the issues we've had with some of these efforts is, the town does not have a big team of people to go after grants and things like this. So yeah, we've got Craig and Maribeth, and that's just one of their many duties. So having a number of people who are, advocates and helping and willing to help in those efforts would be great. So, so anyway, that's following up on that. One of the things we're going to be working on and coming to the town board probably in about a month will be the LED conversion. So if you remember,
Project.
we're looking to do that just about a year ago, and then COVID hit and it kind of got put on hold. But it's coming back around, and the neat thing about all of them is that they can do it with no capital outlay from the part of the town. And there's, whether it's a bond or a lease, that's essentially how the updates are done. But the energy savings, as well as if it's done where we're buying the units out from RG&E, the savings on our utility bills, both the electrical savings and the charges for those street lights, the savings from that not only covers the cost of the installation, but also saves us a good chunk of change. I have a couple estimates from a couple different companies, but I don't want to say them because I don't want to, in any ways, we're going to go out to, I know a lot of these say, oh, you can sole source or you can go out to, it's a professional service, but for something this large, I want to go out, effectively go out to bid.
Okay.
It will be a value bid, not just pure price. So I've started to put together criteria. And again, what we'll do is we'll essentially give them a score, and the higher the score, the lower their, I'll call it net price. So it starts with their price, and then that price, either bad things make the price go up, good things make the price come down, and it's that net score, that net price that we compare. Now, that's not what we'll actually pay, but that's how we essentially compare the relative bids. So I've started to put that list of things together, and now we got to put a little bit more definition to it, but I'd love to do that, bounce that off of the Sustainability Committee as well as off of the town board. Any other questions on that?
Nope.
So last meeting, you got the updates on the proposed local law for the ethics code update. I'd like to call for the public hearing. If you have any comments, so like I had gotten my comments back, they're already factored in. If you have any comments, if you get them to me before this week is out, we can have them factored in, because in the resolution, the local law doesn't have to be published until next week.
Okay.
So if you can get me your comments before the weekend, we can factor those into the, any necessary changes to the local law.
Okay. Will do.
One of the things, just to be clear, as I said to the ethics board, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, depending on what does and doesn't come up, some things we haven't thought of. If changes get made at the public hearing, it's not a big deal. We just advertise again and do it the following meeting. So,
Okay.
But like I said, if you've got changes, let's get them in now. So if we can avoid doing the second go around, we will. But same thing, there's a list of the no parking zones. So these were, it was originally supposed to be included with the last local law update for the cul-de-sac parking. These are the cul-de-sacs that are either too small or there's other reasons why they should be no parking. So the obvious ones are the hammerheads at the little dead ends of Riverton. Some people park there, and then there's no real good way to turn around.
Right.
There was one, there were a couple that, like there's one cul-de-sac that the cul-de-sac itself had some decent size, but it's the emergency access crash gates for an adjacent development. And the fear was, if people didn't realize that, they'd park in front of the crash gate, and if there was ever an emergency, they wouldn't be able to get through there. So, but like I said, most of them are that the cul-de-sacs are too small to actually accommodate any form of on-street parking. That's one I would love to get the word out there.
Yeah.
I'll probably post something to Henrietta Highlights,
Good idea.
because I'd love to hear from the residents if there's strong opposition. And again, if there's strong opposition and we decide to pull one off the list, or there's one that we didn't have on the list that we decide to add it, it's not a big deal. Just delays the process for 2 weeks.
It is an extensive list.
It is.
Yep.
And that was on recommendation from the highway department. Third committee we've got going, the Educators Grove Committee. So in this particular one, we'd actually already done the call for membership. We've got the last person, I have to reach out to get her final answer. We were, there was a empty space because one of the people was going to be a representative from the Conservation Board. And their meeting was just last week, so they didn't have a whole lot of time when I wrote the resolution, between when I asked them and when I wrote the resolution. But hopefully we'll have that last person filled in. But again, for those unfamiliar, the Educators Grove is started with a community effort, a number of alum from the Rush Henrietta Central School District. They were honoring a past educator, wanted to build a permanent memorial, and wanted to do something at school grounds, found out that that's against certain rules. So then they were looking at the park, and it kind of went from there. And where we're looking at doing this is Hoskins Park, which, if you're unfamiliar, is where Pinnacle and Winton split. It's a very narrow triangular park with a busy road on either side. So it's not a good place for a playground. So we thought this would be a good spot for Educators Grove. So it's right out in front of Henrietta Fire Hall number 5.
I call it Old Pinnacle. I couldn't, for the life of me, couldn't figure it, but I
Right.
call
Old
it
Pinnacle,
Sweet
yep.
Old Pinnacle.
Right,
And
yep.
now I got it.
And so the idea is there would be like a circle of pavers with benches around it and trees behind the benches, and then pass through. There's already some short, small paths through the park, but we'll work on enhancing that. And then the idea is, and there's been a little bit of cross-pollination of the names. So we're establishing the Educators Grove Committee. There is also going to be a Friends of the Educators Grove. Although my suggestion is we make it Friends of Henrietta Parks. The Friends Committee would be able to go out and do fundraising. The town committee cannot.
Gotcha.
And so my thought is, again, rather than form one that just raises money for Educators Grove, let's do one that's for all the parks.
Yeah.
And they can certainly start by focusing on the Educators Grove, but then if there's other things they want to do as well.
Yeah.
While I'm on the subject of parks, we do have an interest. I've been contacted by a couple individuals interested in an Eagle Scout project to help the town. I know there was a discussion, I don't remember if it was here or at my staff meeting, about some things that might make for good Eagle Scout projects. This is an individual who would be interested in building something. So if you've got any ideas, by all means, send them to me via email, supervisor@henrietta.org, and I'll bring it up at our next staff meeting. Go ahead, Craig. Do you remember what that was?
Well, no, but something came up to me from that. It wasn't a staff meeting that it went around, and I don't know if we had any other replies to that. Something that came up with another meeting was the expansion of the parking lot for the Lehigh Valley Trail at East Henrietta Road. The biggest encumbrance to that is the display that's sitting there. I don't know if that's sunk in the ground with footers or not. That's going to be the biggest impediment to expanding that parking lot. I don't know if that would be,
We'll take a look at that.
maybe just move it and rebuild it further down or someplace a little bit out of the way. That came up when I was doing a quick research of that. So those two kind of put together in my head. I don't recall any other responses back from any other Eagle Scouts. Some of the other ones were bridge, over creeks and culverts, but I'm still trying to get a hold of telephone poles, and
Right.
wood right now is not cheap. So
No,
Oh,
I don't know if those are beneficial.
I've got an old telephone pole out in front of my house that I'd be happy to, just got to get the telecom wires off of it.
I have another question about
The double
parks.
poles.
I got a guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
For Tinker Park, I was gonna ask Tim Pratt about this, but since we're talking about parks, have any idea when they might finish the trail that leads into Park Acre? Right now, it's just wood chips. Everything else is kind of got fill or something else over it, where it's very stable. And maybe I'll email Tim and ask him.
Are you sure it's not intended to stay wood chips?
It might, I have no idea.
And what are the other trails?
The other trails,
Stone dust?
yeah. That's the only part in there that I recognize that has chips still.
Right.
So I was just wondering, I said, well, maybe it's something they're gonna finish in the future, and because things have been like they are, they haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah,
I do know that some trails are wood chips, and that's basically what happens to the leaf and brush, especially the branches
gotcha.
that gets dropped off. It gets turned into wood chips.
Other question I had was, you guys, this is off topic, but it was at our zoning board meeting, and I was wondering when the Freemasons might be starting their project. And one of the residents had a question about, laterals for regular water, because her dishes are pretty gross from the well water and everything.
So I don't know when they're looking to come in.
Okay,
We haven't heard a whole lot from them,
okay,
other than there was a question or two asked that indicated they are working on it, but it just seems to be going slowly. In terms of the water, the one section of Middle Road is on the slate. If we can use that, if we can use the COVID relief fund infrastructure money for that.
okay,
The way they worded the infrastructure monies is flawed.
yeah,
What I mean by that, they say it has to be sewer or water improvements that benefit the whole town. Well, there's no such thing.
right, the whole town.
Even if you built a water treatment plant, which you sure as heck can't do for the roughly $2 to $3 million that we were given, it doesn't help anybody who's on a well. So it
Right,
doesn't help the whole town. Same thing, sewage treatment plant doesn't help anybody on septic. So hopefully they'll realize their mistake and fix that wording. The thing, I think what they're basically trying to say is they don't want it helping individual property owner. They want it to be a neighborhood.
yeah.
It should
So there are a
help the
couple of
neighborhood or
questions on
community.
that from two different neighbors wondering if there's going to be an extension down there. And question came up because we're talking about the landscaping company, but they're not doing any water, any sewer. They're just going to have to.
Yeah, I don't know that, although the houses closest to Lehigh Station Road, I do think have laterals running out to Lehigh Station Road.
These people are in the 400 block, so they don't have it yet, I don't
Right.
think.
No, I know. I'm just saying
Yeah.
in terms of that. So
Right.
I don't remember if the northernmost of the landscaping company had multiple parcels.
Okay,
And I think one of them may have been close enough to have a lateral, but I'm not positive on
okay,
that. But like I said, that is, to me, that one is the priority.
Gotcha.
So first off, the infrastructure can be used for sewer or water. To me, water takes priority over sewer.
Mhm.
To me, there are areas where I do think we want to help out with sewers where we can, like we just did with Lehigh Station Road.
right,
But water takes a priority, especially as, things get more built out. There's less water that then soaks into the ground. And therefore, that potentially has an adverse impact on the mineral concentration in the water that's there. So the more water you have in, the more diluted any mineral content is for well water. But the reason that Middle Road section to me is top priority is because it's now an industrial zone and there are industrial properties right near it. And so there's a much greater chance of contamination of the well water than,
yeah, and the printing company was brought up about contamination
Yeah.
too in that area, so.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's definitely on our radar. Again, that's they posted, they basically started a petition. They put something online, as I said to them. If we get the okay to use the funds from the COVID relief bill for that,
Okay,
that is, to me, priority number one. Then there's sections of Telephone Road, East River Road, Rush Henrietta Town Line Road, Williams, Willard, Tobin, might be one more, that don't have water. And so again, my goal would be, let's extend water to all of those. If there's money left over, then we would look at areas that need sewer.
right,
And specific areas that I would target with sewer are areas that Our older neighborhoods, you know, so for instance, the houses across from the high school where we started, when their septic went in, their whole backyard was farm field, right? Now there's neighborhoods back there. So it's a lot harder to get a septic system in there if they have to replace it. In addition, the requirements for the tank and the leach fields have increased from when those were first put in. So that's, to me, from a sewer priority, that's one. There's another, is it Church Hill and Hill Terrace? It's a subdivision that was all septic.
Okay.
That's one that I would take a look at. So again, it would be these subdivisions where with the new standards, it would be very tough for people to rebuild their septic system on their existing lots. If you're out like where I live on a Brooks Road, the field yards are big enough. Septic is an absolutely fine solution. Not to mention the hilly nature of the road would make really expensive sewer, because you'd have a pump station pretty much in the valley of every,
Gotcha.
after every hill. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But again, that's going to be on a funds available basis. I have no idea how much it's going to take to get water to everybody.
Well, from just what you mentioned, it seems like we could have used more COVID infrastructure money. Those funds, we could really use them in our town.
Yep. Don't know if I can get, convince the folks up in Arundecoit. For the formula yielded 22 million for them.
They might want to give us some of their cash so we
Yeah,
can
they could
use it.
definitely share it around here.
Holy crap.
It was a weird formula, but it's because they're over 50,000. That makes a big difference.
Where are we,
Population.
45?
We're,
48?
yeah, I think we're not far. It'll be interesting to see what happens after the census.
Yeah.
But we apparently needed 89 more people.
I heard.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Is there anybody that was expecting that had?
that's right.
I think there was a number of
Yeah,
people that
you've done your
simply
part.
didn't fill out the census.
I know.
89. Well, you know, we had a COVID, we had pandemic going. I mean, it's
I
crazy.
know.
What are you gonna do?
Pilot. So the Cornerstone Pilot is pretty much ready to go with all the terms. I just put something back together. It's got it. It's not on the agenda for this meeting because I made a number of corrections. Don, have you had a chance to review those yet?
I saw your email, but I haven't.
Yeah, if you could look through that, maybe after Wednesday.
Okay.
I'd like to get it out to them soon. They're largely minor corrections. Some of it is, I don't like where there's things repeated in the contract. Especially because, so for instance, they were talking about the rates. They had it in two different places where, because we have it escalating, it's a shelter rent 5% year one, 6% year two, 7, 8, 9, 10. But if you actually look at the thing I put in the protection so we don't have what happened at Apex, where if they don't finish construction within the first year, they still owe us taxes. Apex actually paid no property tax last year because their construction was delayed due to the pandemic. I don't know that they would have gotten done in the spring or in the fall anyway. But the point is, because it's a shelter rent, they collected no rent, therefore 5% of nothing is nothing. That just seems wrong, but that's the way the contract was written, so I fixed that. I also added something in there for a termination. We have a recapture if the contract is terminated mid-year, either for non-compliance with the New York State, what is it? FHA, that they're the ones who oversee the affordable housing. So that's why they're getting the pilot, is they're doing affordable senior housing. If they fail to be compliant, we already had something in there that had that if they failed to be compliant, that the pilot would terminate. It didn't give them a fixed amount of time to correct. So I put in 90 days. I wouldn't be surprised if they push back and ask for a little bit more of that because we're dealing with the state. But the other thing I put in learning our lessons from what's going on right now with the Delphi pilot is that if it's terminated for any reason, the recapture clause kicks in. Now, in this case, we're not going backwards, the theory being it would only be a recapture of the portion of the year that they weren't providing senior housing. That's the theory being, every year they provide senior housing, they deserve the break. It's not, the difference is the other pilots, like the Delphi, they're a look forward pilot. So it's, hey, we're going to give you this tax break if you hire this many people and keep them here for this amount of time. Well, if they don't hire enough people or keep them there for that amount of time, those jobs for that amount of time, they don't deserve the full pilot. They're supposed to have a recapture. In this case, it's just, are they providing the affordable housing in compliance with New York State? The instant they stop doing that, they lose the pilot. So all that stuff's ready to go. The other thing we're waiting on is they're finishing up the adjustment of the tax parcel lines for that property. But that should be ready to go.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? 4th of July. So the current plans are that we're not going to have the normal all-day festivities. But what we will do is have a band and fireworks. We're not going to have the band at the pavilion, at the normal band pavilion, because I don't want people setting up there and then having to pick up and move and set up on the other side to watch the fireworks. So we're going to actually put a temporary tent near the playground so that you get in your seat once, you'll be able to see both the band and the fireworks. The idea will be we're going to reserve the big parking lot right there in front of the playground, as well as the parking lot at the rec center. Those will be reserved for people who wish to view the fireworks from their car, whether that means inside the car or just outside, but essentially that kind of forces social distancing. But for those people who feel more safe doing that, and I think it was Rob who made a good suggestion that we do that through a registration. So they register ahead of time and get a parking pass. And then the rest of the parking will be for people who want to sit on the lawn. On the lawn, typically people bring blankets. Everybody in the blanket, if you're all from the same cohort, you can be sitting close together, but blankets themselves will be 6 feet apart. I know there's some 3 feet talk about with outdoor and whatever. I want to stick with 6 feet. That way, if people aren't quite at 6 feet, we're still within the full limits. Right now, there's a 200-person maximum for outdoor events. We're fully expecting that to go away. There's supposed to be an update coming in a week or two. I don't know if it'll be a full lifting for outdoor events. As you know, we decided to stick with a reverse parade for Memorial Day parade because, like I said, as of right now, we wouldn't be able to legally hold the parade.
Right.
But for the 4th of July, we're working on the assumption that, as the positive cases continue to decline, as the vaccinations continue to rise, we'll see a lessening of these restrictions and we'll be able to have the events. But, at this point in time, we just didn't think it made sense to try to do all the big festival. Hopefully next year we'll be back to normal.
Better safe than sorry.
Yep. I know a question has been, are adjoining towns holding the fireworks? Most of them are. There's a couple that are, I've heard no one say we're not doing them. There's a couple who have said they are still making that decision. And I think it's basically a lot of it, they're waiting for this announcement that's coming out in a week or two about the, what the restrictions will be for outdoor activities this summer. So, there won't be that risk of us being the only fireworks in town. Any other questions on that?
Will we be encouraging people to wear masks at this event?
In outdoor, it'll be whatever the guidance is at the time. For outdoor events, it's probably not necessary. What we might say is, in other words, if people are going to use the restrooms, put on your mask. When you're seated at your blanket, I don't know that they'll need them. But again, that'll be based off of whatever the current guidelines are at the time. So. Any other questions on that?
Our fireworks will be at the same cost that we've been doing it. It will be a full bore. It won't be anything pulled back.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the contract that's currently been in
Right.
place, so.
Okay.
So,
Last time we did fireworks, we toned it back a little bit. Just want this.
well, that was just because it was daytime.
Right.
We were doing the shorter burst ones and we also, so.
Okay.
But no, it's the planned normal one. And if you remember, we had signed that the way we had done the deal, we get additional ground-based effects too.
Right.
So.
Yep. All right.
Now, the thing I will say is fireworks have been hard to come by, which is why we got our order in early. But hopefully that won't be an issue. I've
Great.
not heard of it being an issue, but I'll ask Pam and Craig to follow up to see where it's at.
Just
So-
seems since we're opening up, everything's hard to get a hold of.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that fireworks were hard to get a hold of. That's-
Yeah, that's another one of the plants. They're made in countries that were having
More issues.
more issues. So domestic production isn't too bad, but a lot of the foreign production is down. So I think one thing this pandemic has shown is some of the things that we need to increase our domestic production of, especially when it comes to critical things like medical supplies.
Sure.
So, I don't know if Chris, either of the Chris's are online, but the facilities building bid is tomorrow?
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll have the results from that bid and put together something for the resolution for Wednesday.
Great.
Have you heard responses, like in terms of, because we record how many are pulled down? Or have we gotten any back in yet, Chris? Do you know? Or Becky?
Not that I'm aware of.
None have been turned in, but we got a lot of folks contacted us to receive the bid specs.
Right. I do know one of the problems that we've had I've received a couple comments from a couple of the smaller framing companies, which this would be up their avenue in terms of size, but they basically said they're not able to respond because of all of the requirements that go with it, from insurance and paperwork and all that stuff. Don, is that required by state or is that required by us, out of curiosity? Do you know?
The insurances and paperwork.
Yeah.
Associated with your bids. I'm assuming a lot of that is local requirement, but I would need to know specific.
Right.
There's a lot of different details.
We might want to consider what I'll refer to as a mini bid, that for a smaller project, we lighten some of those standards so that we could get some of these smaller companies. But basically, like I said, at least 2 companies have said to me they were interested in responding. They're just not able to. They don't have the personnel to put all that stuff together. it really is geared more towards the larger companies.
Yeah, that's probably possible to, because most of that stuff is locally set. The bidding and the
Right.
bonding and the insurance and all that stuff.
So that's something to think about. Chris, if I forget, let's bring that up at tomorrow's meeting, engineering meeting, just to start thinking about.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? We actually have 2 Eagle Scouts. Maribeth noticed that the second individual's ceremony is just prior or on or about the next meeting. So there's a second one. They're both there. In addition to Naomi Urban, we have Eagle Scout John Wagner. Just a special note for Naomi Urban. She is the first female in Henrietta to get Eagle Scout and the second one in the Seneca Waterways Regional Council. So
Yes. That's awesome. Mhm. Very
Man,
impressive.
congratulations.
Mhm.
we have the recommendation from the youth board for their student member. So you should see the person's name and resume. If you remember the way the student board works, it's similar to the library board. It's who they pick.
Mhm.
If there were some, I don't know why we would say no, but in theory, we do have veto power, so to speak,
Yeah.
but it pretty much goes by who they recommend.
Well, it was a very impressive letter from Michael, the social worker there.
Yep.
Yeah. Looks like he's going to be a great candidate for that.
And then we have actually 2 donations. The first one is at Senior Center, or is it park or rec program?
Golf
Look up-
tees?
This is Pam.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is actually a donation to the disc golf course at Lookup Park.
Yep, disc golf course. Thank you. I forgot about that. It's the tee pads, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's not Dave Thomas from Wendy's, is it?
Well, everybody asks that. Actually, he is the recreation supervisor in the town of Riga, but he's a resident in Henrietta and avid disc golf player.
That's great.
And then we have the Lancets did a sizable donation to the library. Do you want to add anything to that, Adrian?
They gave $1,000 last year as well. The family's been very generous to the library. We've been watching their kids grow up. Their oldest, Katie, was an infant when I started working here, and now she reads to her little sister, and it's been wonderful having them, kind of be part of our library through the years, and they're supporting us, and it's really kind.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. We have a few budget adjustments. I don't know if and personnel items. I don't know if there's anything worth mentioning, Linda. If anybody has any question on those.
Meeting. No, the budget adjustments, we got some additional funding from the state for our CHIPS program and a grant from the court and a few other things. So we're increasing our revenue and then the offsetting expenses.
Great. The CHIPS, this was the 20% withholding. Is that what that was?
Yeah, they gave us back a little last year and then they just gave us back the balance.
Great. Always nice to get your own money. Mike Stafford is on for bills payable. Hopefully I think it's only today that he's out.
Yeah, because Maybe I
I'll-
could
I'll
co-
get a
maybe
hold
I'll
of-
cover for him if he can't do it.
I'll have him swap with you, if
Okay.
I give him a call, but.
Yep.
Anything else under old business? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from April 26, 2021 workshop meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford. Oh, sorry, I don't need to say his name. I should note that Mike was on the YouTube, so he just is not able to say anything here. Let me jump back into it. Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So, yeah, Mike, I'll try to get a hold of you later, assuming you're still listening on YouTube. Try to get a hold of you later to ensure that you'll be able to do bills payable. Otherwise, you heard Rob is willing to swap with you.
Yes. June will be busier than this month.
Anything else?
I was just wondering if we had any thoughts or anything on the cannabis legislation. I know some of the towns are starting to have conversations around that.
Only that, yes, we are planning to do some, but it hasn't really gone much farther than that. One of the big things we're gonna have to take a look at, start thinking about where you think it would be appropriate. So, we can either add it to specific zones or, do some sort of overlay type of thing, or, but
Are there any zones that would be restricted from that being placed?
well, I mean, it would.
Well, near
obviously-
schools,
Right,
I
it would,
understand that.
obviously only commercial or industrial would really be appropriate, but, yeah, so there's certain things that you have to be away from, in looking at it. So for instance, if you look at the adult industry type stores, there's just a couple industrial areas like Brighton, Henrietta Town Line Road between Jefferson and West Henrietta Road. That's one of the areas. I seem to think there's one other, there's a stretch over on, I don't remember if the East Henrietta Road Club is grandfathered in or whether.
I
we
think
made
they
that
are.
zone.
There is a CBD office or establishment near our post office.
Yeah,
New York
CBD
Seeds.
wasn't specifically restricted, now we
Okay.
could certainly take a look at doing something with that with regards to this new legislation, but there was nothing specifically, there's a couple CBD locations.
Right.
Several in Henrietta already,
Right.
yeah. Mhm.
But like, so someone had suggested, for instance, Southtown Plaza. They were looking at those more than like the B2 districts, which are like East Henrietta Road, where the stores, in other words, the houses are right back up to the stores. Whereas if you go, there really aren't any houses around Southtown Plaza. Now, with that said, there's a chance that they could come in with a multifamily development as part of mixed use. In which case we'd have to figure out what that means, in fact, we might say is that it's not allowed on a mixed use, within a mixed use development. So those are the kinds of things we have to take a look at, both where it's allowed and what restrictions it'll be on it.
My reasoning for mentioning CBD was if they apply for the license, since they're already
Oh, in addition,
connected to that
yeah.
industry, are we looking to, are they going to be able to do
Apply
it
for which license?
for the new
For
licensing?
the cannabis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the point is, we couldn't force them to move to my understanding, we couldn't really force them to move their existing CBD. They'd be grandfathered in, but if they wanted to expand to also sell the cannabis, then they would have to, they would be required to meet the new,
I guess we'll have to look into it to
Zoning.
see in
Yeah.
case someone's thinking that.
right?
You know, because I think it's a natural for them to
Right,
go to that next level since it's going to be state.
yeah,
Right.
potentially. Mhm.
So yeah, we do need to start thinking about it. December 31st is coming, but there's so many other things going on. I understand. Holy cow.
I was just wondering if maybe there were any other regions that maybe had already gone through this sort of process that maybe we could take a look at. I don't know. I don't really know what the legislation is in Colorado or anything, but you know, if there's anything that's similar there that we could use as a model might be helpful.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know Colorado, it's been legal for a while, Washington. But again, I don't know how it relates to, I gotta believe they also have zoning. They have, you know, similar restrictions, but
I would think so. I don't know.
Washington State or Washington DC?
Washington State.
Yeah, I think every state's legislation on this is custom. It's not obviously because it's state by state, not federal.
Right.
Certainly, we could look into Colorado. I have no idea what their legislate, outside of that, it's legal there. I don't know how it relates to New York. That would be its own
Well, we
sort
got
of,
Vermont, right? We got Vermont. Is New Jersey there yet?
I'm not sure.
I know Vermont. is,
But
right?
I think the supervisor's model of let's look at where we allow other adult type industry at this point and ask ourselves why and whether that's appropriate. And if so, that would seem like the easiest way to implement this.
Well, I guess one of the questions, like for instance, liquor stores,
Right. That's what I'm talking
where
about.
are they limited to?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know offhand, but it's similar to that.
Right.
A lot of questions.
Certainly commercial or industrial, I would guess. Certainly
Right.
not in residential, for example.
Yeah, and like I said, I wouldn't see it in B2, if B1, but even then I would probably,
Let me see.
you know, it'd be interesting, do we do it like that it's a restriction, it has to be more than 500,000 feet, whatever number from any, you know, residence. I don't know. If we're gonna throw something like that on, I would go into the GIS and buffer to make sure we're not, you know, you can't essentially say, you can't
think
put
it's
a
already-
restriction such that it can't fit anywhere in town,
Oh,
right?
it's true. I think that's already prohibited via the legislation, the state legislation itself.
Within a residence or within so many feet from, I know it's
The
church or
school and all
school.
that stuff. Yeah.
I know, but my point is, we might want it, so like I said, the difference between, when you look at the B2 zones, they tend to be the back, right out the back of the commercial property are residences. So again, think of East Henrietta Road, right? Whereas you look at some of the big B1 zones, like Southtown, there really aren't any residents nearby. Same thing with a lot of stuff on Jefferson Road. Now, I don't know whether we want the main drag of Jefferson Road to be on that list or not, or do we focus more on the areas that might need some commercial revitalization, and, you know, put it in those areas. I don't know. That's something to be determined.
For right now in B2 right now says bars, taverns, and restaurants serving alcohol for on-premises consumption are prohibited
Right.
in B2. Just for your information.
Yeah, again, I think it's for the same reasons, because B2 tend to be in close proximity to homes.
Right. So presumably things are allowed in these types of things are allowed in B1.
With a special permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Hearing no objections, meeting adjourned.